Hello everyone, my name is Wayne.
And I'm Rebecca.
And we are your Bourbon Journey. In the fall of 2024, I contacted Brad Bonds at Revival Vintage Spirits. I was looking to go ahead and acquire some small bottles that we could review during our vintage bottle tastings. And he just happened to have three. One we've already reviewed, Hill and Hill. One that's behind me that will come probably later this summer. And this one here that we decided to go ahead and pick up today, and that is a JW Dant, which is now a Heaven Hill product. So Rebecca, tell us a little bit about what you found in researching this bottle.
Yeah, well, it's pretty interesting. For one thing, you're always trying to figure out the age of a bottle, right? So some research found that it has a lettering system on the bottom of the bottle. And they started doing this in the 1970s. So you can look at a chart and look at the letter and you kind of know what year it was. So this has an O, which means it was from 1984. It is a 4-year-old. That means it was distilled in 1980. So I'll go ahead and share a few other things that I found out as well. This is a Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey made by the Dant Distilling Company. Based on the Louisville stamp on the bottom, it was probably distilled at the Shenley Distillery in Louisville. While I don't know the exact mash bill, a common estimate for the Bernheim-Shenley era mash bill was 73 to 75% corn, 15 to 20% rye, and 8 to 12% malted barley. We've already noted that it's 4 years old, and it's also 90 proof. And it's pretty interesting when you look at this because the Dant brand started in 1836, and it was really known for running in a log. I mean, if you've ever been to the Log Still Distillery, they will show you that. So the family legacy is pretty deep, and they've had some organizational changes, been bought and sold, etc. And as Wayne mentioned, they are currently owned by Heaven Hill Brands. They bought them in 1993. So that pretty much sums it up. There's not just a ton to tell about it since it's been moved along. I looked for advertising because I love that. Tried to find some advertising. There was so much cool advertising in the 60s and 70s. But for some reason, I don't know if that's when it was in its downturn and it was just before Heaven Hill would have bought them, but there wasn't hardly any Dant advertising in the 1980s. But the 60s and 70s were pretty funny.
So this was probably before it's become the sad product that it currently is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to those of you that like the current product out there, that's fine. I'm not a fan.
Well, they do sell it as a bottle and bond now.
They do.
That was not the case before. As I mentioned, this is 90 proof. It is 4 years old though.
Yes.
But now it's one of the Heaven Hill mini bottle and bond options.
Yes.
So
let's pick it up and take a look at it.
It's pretty gold. I mean, it's almost like sunlight. With the light hitting the bottle, it looks like sunshine coming through there. It's not super leggy, although it is clinging a bit to the glass.
I've got a little bit of a rim.
Yeah, I've got some little pearls forming. Yeah. So it'll probably get some little legs coming down in just a moment. We don't expect a lot with a 4-year-old that's 90 proof, but it's got some little drips. It looks kind of nice. So let's check out the nose.
Okay. Kind of butterscotch.
Yeah, it's a hint of butterscotch. It doesn't come across super sweet, but you feel like, and we get a lot of butterscotch notes on the Dusties, I think. It's kind of funny.
Yes.
That ethanol thing's kind of coming through, which I often have trouble with things that are between 80 and 90 proof for some reason. That's when I have more nose burn, which is fascinating to me. That doesn't happen to me when it's a higher proof.
There's, of course, butterscotch there. There is a baking spice in there that I can't identify.
I'm finding it to be a little bit like an allspice almost. It
be.
Doesn't really smell like cinnamon.
Yeah, it's something that doesn't ring familiar with me. There is alcohol, and I'll tell you, you get in there. We tasted a lot of vintage, and this one here may have the most of the ethanol in it.
It does have some nice legs, though. I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah, I've gotten a few.
It looks pretty nice.
I almost, the inside of my glass almost looks like the outside of a Maker's Mark bottle when they do the wax, because I've got like a leg coming here and I got a leg over here, and it's kind of spaced out.
Well, let's go ahead and taste it and see. It's been waiting since 1984.
That's the year I graduated.
So cheers to sipping on history with JW Dant.
JW Dant, history. Cheers. That's got a little more heat than I was expecting for a 90 proof.
And again, my experience is that sometimes these 80 to 90 proofers, they've been watered down and some of the flavor goes away and then the alcohol's left.
Yep.
You know.
Now this is our first pour of the day. We haven't warmed up at all.
But at 90 proof, we didn't think we needed to.
No, not really. So we're probably gonna have to take a couple more tastes here to kind of acclimate our palate to figure out what's there.
Now, were you getting any kind of butterscotch on that first one? It had some sweetness, but it wasn't quite the butterscotch I had on the nose.
There was butterscotch in it for sure.
But it's not super sweet butterscotch.
Oh, and this is one of those rare times I'm getting, I believe it's cardamom. There is a very unique taste that I normally don't get.
Well, and I was going to say I'm getting an odd taste myself, and it's almost got a bitter note.
Yes.
And so I was sitting here trying to process that, you know, this kind of almost bitter note, not like a walnut bitter, right? Not that kind of bitter, but it's just, it starts out with that butterscotch and then it's shifting to something a little bitter towards the back of my palate a bit.
Almost a little bit of barrel notes because there's something astringent in the back, and there's definitely black pepper, which I will say of the vintages we've had up here, I don't think, at least with the recent ones, I haven't picked anything like black pepper up, or even barrel. Maybe the Fitzgerald up there, but interesting.
Yeah, so I am definitely still getting that. Again, it's the light butterscotch, but it's almost a burnt butterscotch, because it's not the sweetness of like a butterscotch candy. It's almost like a burnt butterscotch because it's got a little bit of that bitter note, which happens when something gets a little bit burned. And I'm not saying that part is unpleasant. It's just not super sweet like you normally get on a butterscotch note. And then the bitter notes, I'm not sure if that would be cardamom or not, but it could be. Normally I get more tea notes with cardamom, and I'm not sure I'm getting tea with this. But let's check out the finish too. I do feel it's warm.
It is definitely warm.
Yeah, it's kind of it's not a long finish, but I'm not getting a lot of dynamics on it.
It may not be a long finish, but it's a strong finish. It's astringent. That's the word that keeps coming to mind. And like I said, maybe I'm repeating myself, maybe a tad of black pepper. There's a reason why this brand went defunct. If this was toward the very end of their existence.
About 9 years, this would have been bottled 9 years before Heaven Hill bottled.
Yes, and it drinks hotter than 90. I'm not saying it's a hazmat, but a lot of the bottles, the Hill and Hill, the others that we have up there, drink about their proof, maybe a tad bit higher.
Yeah, and when we say it's drinking hot, the issue for me is, because if you watch us at all, you know, we love Booker's and things and Elijah Craig barrel proof and all that stuff, but those are flavor bombs.
Yes.
Right? So you've got the flavor with that, and then you're getting a lot of different notes on the finish. While it's warm, it's also got the char notes and the tobacco sometimes, and it's got some cinnamon and all these other things going on. This one's just warm for the sake of being warm, I think. It doesn't have a huge flavor profile, which is my biggest issue. I was hopeful, because the legs are pretty good, that it would have some viscosity. I'm not saying it's overly thin, because it's not.
It's not thin.
Yeah, so, but it's got, it's a little harsh.
That's
not,
a word.
I wouldn't call it smooth.
It is not.
And again, I often find this when things have been proofed down to the point that a lot of the flavor notes are taken away. And when you're talking about a young bourbon that's only 4 years old, it doesn't have the benefit of that barrel.
Mm-hmm.
It only has the minimum 4 years of that barrel. And so when you water it down, it has taken away some of the flavors that were hardly there to start with.
This should have, and it's probably the era, 84, you're talking about the kind of the decline.
Mm-hmm.
This was probably pulled that soon for a reason to get rid of it, not being insulting. This probably should have stayed in the barrel another couple years because there are aspects. The butterscotch is there, and I think with the barrel,
it's got potential.
It's got aspects in there where I think it would be very good. But the version we have right here, I would have to label mediocre.
Yeah.
And I'll ask you this question, but I already have an answer. Is this something that once this were done that you would want another bottle?
Probably not. And
Yes.
I didn't mention this earlier, and I should have, but this is a screw cap bottle.
Mm-hmm.
And when we opened it, it was full. You can see from the pictures it was full. So it had not had any evaporation really. And you can tell on the nose, we know pretty fast, as we've done enough vintage, if a vintage isn't good, if it's gone bad, right? Is it the spirit that was in there and that's what we're tasting, or has it gone bad? And this is also very clear. There's no cloudiness to it. That's the other thing we find, that if it's really cloudy when you pour it in your glass, you're going, I hope that tastes okay. This is very clear. I don't think it had any kind of issue with the bottle itself. So I just want to be clear about that, because you can get spirits that are older that maybe the bottle wasn't in good shape. While this had the tax seal was a little crumply, that's about it. The label is really nice. And again, it had a perfect seal on it. It cracked right open. So I believe we're tasting what we're supposed to be tasting, I guess is my point.
Yes.
And not something that's gone defunct, from getting air in it or something like that. So.
Now, smelling it again, and while you were talking, I went ahead and tasted it. I think there's almost an allspice.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's what I found the first time. Yeah.
And it's really coming out now, in my opinion.
Well, as the glass gets lower and the alcohol is still clinging to the sides, you get a little bit more nose surface, really.
Mm-hmm.
We love smelling an empty glass because sometimes you pick up things you've not gotten along the way.
I do think that the nose does not match the taste. I think the nose is not bad.
The nose is pretty good. I think that, but even on the nose, I thought it was a lightly sweet butterscotch. It wasn't super sweet.
Yeah.
And as I said before, it's almost like you were fixing butterscotch and it got a little bit burnt. It went a little bit too far on the stove.
I'm glad we got it. I'm glad we reviewed it. We got a really good price. It was bundled with a couple other things that we really wanted. And there's not a lot of the Dants that Brad has come across, if I remember correctly.
I still enjoyed this experience.
Yes.
Because it's all about trying to understand vintage whiskeys, right? Where they come from, what's their history, where are they now? And this one has shifted. I'm going to be honest, I do think this one tastes a little better than what Heaven Hill puts out.
I was about ready to make that comment. And we talked about actually going and buying a bottle of Dant, but we didn't want to spend the whopping $20 or so on it. And I totally agree. If this were a head matchup, this bottle just blows the current one out of the water, because it's just.
Yeah, it has it just makes you wonder, because it has a lot of those similar kind of notes though, but it's 100 proof, and we don't believe in drain pours, but the way we finished off our fifth of Dant before was I use it to braise chicken wings. So that's the only reason we buy another bottle, because it's really good. I don't know if you know that alcohol can be a great tenderizer. If you have one that's kind of a low price point and you're not crazy about drinking it, it's a great way to tenderize some meat and add some additional flavors. It's pretty interesting how that works.
It is. So. And a head-to-head, this version is much better. I really wish that Heaven Hill would actually adopt this flavor profile with it, even though I don't think it's outstanding. It's better than the current.
Yeah, I don't think it's a lot better. It's a notch better. And it's interesting because, the current one is a bottle and bond, and it's 100 proof. And that might this at 100, if this were 100 proof, it might take some of that ethanol edge off of it.
Let's raise our glass to the people that worked at Dant back in the day. Sorry we couldn't say better things about it, but we were being honest. It's not the worst I've had. It's not the best I've had.
It was still a great experience.
But it was still a great experience. And Brad, once again, you always come through. And we look forward to maybe later this summer or maybe in the early fall coming down and getting some more that we can review. Thank you so much for your time. Always remember to drink responsibly. If you like what we do, hit the subscribe button. Yeah, it's free, so not many free things left in the world. What can I say? Cheers.
Just sipping on history.
Sipping on history.